Welcome, everyone. So tonight we're going to do a couple of different things. First, I had a talk this morning with a lawyer who lives in the village. He's not practicing law anymore. He didn't want me to give his name. But I asked him about these issues and how American law works in these same cases. So he said, he looked it up, he says specifically, a neighbor cannot force another neighbor to build a fence. Whereas the Talmud is telling us that if you have neighbors and there is a fence separating the property, and the fence falls down, well, that's the case we're going to be talking about tonight. One neighbor rebuilds the fence, he can actually compel the neighbor to share in the cost. So American law, apparently that's not the case. The other thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to actually bring in the Rambam, because I've been told that the ladies want the bottom line. They want to know, they don't want to just hear the arguments back and forth, but they want to hear what's the decision, what actually happens. So the Rambam was active in the 12th century. He was born in Spain. Later he was in Morocco. Then he traveled through Israel. He wound up settling in Egypt. He died in Egypt in, I think, 1204. And he is the one who is probably the most famous of all those who gave decisions, basically who laid down the law. And he is famous for having codified the 613 mitzvos and all the halachas. So he's basically the highest authority, although there have been others since them, Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, and so on, but the Rambam is pretty good. So we're going to go through a little bit of the Gemara, then we're going to see what the Rambam has to say about it, because at the time of the Gemara, they did not actually write down what the final decisions were. You had the discussions and each side being quoted, but actually what the decision was, that wasn't written down. And they knew what it was, but they didn't leave it for us. Well, what they did was, they did provide us with all the arguments pro and con. And that's very important too, because someone could come along at some point and say, well, these people, they were just men, and I'm a man too, and why isn't my opinion just as good as theirs? So the Gemara was careful to list all the opinions, and even they knew someone whose version was not accepted, they still wanted to understand what motivated that person to make that kind of statement and have that opinion. So that's why all this back and forth, what they call Shakli Vitaria, is taking place. So we can start on the Mishnah. We did the Mishnah last week, but we'll go back to it. You have a pink flag there. And we're in Masechta Bava Basra. We're in the first chapter, the first parak. We're on Daf Hey, page 5a. We're in the Mishnah. And we'll go through the Mishnah quickly. We'll read what Rambam has to say about it, and then we'll continue along. Okay, so the Mishnah says, Kosel Chatzer Shenafal. So if you have a situation where there are two neighbors and their properties are adjoining and there's a fence in between the two properties, they call it a wall, could have been any kind of a separation, and this wall fell down, whether it fell down because of a fire, a flood, an earthquake, whatever caused the fence to fall down. The fence fell down, and now one neighbor, so I don't know, let's say Stan and Dove are next door neighbors, and the fence fell down between them. Stan builds the fence back up, and now he goes to Dove, and he says, hey Dove, that fence was separating our property, and I rebuilt it. Now you've got to compensate me for your share of the cost of building that fence, okay? And what the Mishnah says, it says, Mechayvenoso levnoso ad arba amos. He can require the neighbor to compensate him for the cost of building it up to 4 amos. 4 amos is, an amma is between 18 and 24 inches, so 6 to 8 feet. And the reason they decided on that height is because that's basically the height of a normal person, or sort of average to a little bit taller than average height. And they considered it a nuisance if the neighbor could see into their property. So they wanted to build a fence high enough so that the neighbor could not see my daughter sunbathing or whatever was going on right there. So So that's why they had that height. So that's the standard height. And the Mishnah continues, says, V'chezka shenasan, and once this fence has been built up, we assume that Dov would have paid. Ad she'avi raya shelo nasan. So what's happening here? The fence fell down, Stanley built the fence back up again. 6 or 8 months later, Stan comes into court and he says, Dov, my next door neighbor, never paid me the cost of rebuilding the fence. So Dov we assume that Dov would have paid, because that's a normal thing. It's a normal sized fence, they shared it, it had been there for who knows how long before, and most likely Dov would have paid. And also, Stan is coming after a while. He's not coming immediately, bring him to court, he's coming after a while, time has passed. So, yes, Stan?
Didn't I ask in advance of building the fence? Did Stan ask in advance of building the fence?
Right,
or did he ask
right.
After
So,
the fact, so before the fact?
after the fact. You went ahead and you built up the.
I didn't ask.
You didn't ask. You didn't ask. Maybe he was on vacation, you didn't see him, or maybe you just wanted to get it done, you didn't bother to ask him, you figured he was gonna pay. Whatever it is, you went ahead and you did it on your own without talking to him. If you, obviously if you had spoken to him first, you could have solved all these problems, but what can I tell you, Stan? You didn't.
That's fine.
Right. So now we're in the situation where you want to get paid. So the assumption is that if you come into court after a period of time has elapsed, most likely he paid you at that time, and therefore what they're actually going to ask him to do, and the Rambam is going to explain to us, is going to ask him to take a shvua, to swear that he paid, and then he's off the hook. So next the Mishnah says, "Me'arba amos ulamalon ein mechayev noso." So suppose when Stan built up this fence, he didn't go just 4 amos, he went 6 amos or 8 amos. So maybe he built it 8 feet high, 10 feet high. For whatever reason, he built it that high. So can he go now to Dov and say to Dov, you need to pay me for the entire height that I built that fence?
He can ask, but he doesn't have to give it.
He doesn't have to give it, why not?
Because it's not the usual.
Because it's not standard, right? So in other words, if he wants to go beyond what the normal size is, he can ask. That's right. He always can ask, but the court is not going to obligate Dov to pay more than what is standard. Okay. So samach lo kosel acher. So suppose Dov doesn't go ahead and pay this difference. Stan built this fence to the height of 6 amos. So now it's 8 feet high or 10 feet high. And Dov says to him, I'm willing to pay you for the first 4 amos, and he does. But then Dov goes ahead and he builds a wall parallel to the wall that's already been built by Stan. Okay? So what is he doing? What's his plan, basically? He's building a wall next to it, parallel to it, maybe a few, 10 or 15 feet away, because he's probably intending to make another little building there. And he's going to make use of the wall that Stan built. Right? So what happens? So afal pi shelo nasan alav es tikra, even though Dov didn't yet put the roof on, the Mishnah says magagalon of esakol. We roll the whole expense into him. We go back and we say to him, listen, you have demonstrated by your actions that you want that wall that Stan built. You can't say you didn't want it, because you're building this wall alongside of it with the intention, obviously, of making another structure there. So you want to use that wall, and therefore you can be required to pay. But the Mishnah says, "V'cheska shelo nasan," but it's assumed that he did not pay for the additional height, because that's not normally required of him. Ad yavi raya shenasan, until Dov can bring proof that he paid. So for the first 4 amos, we assume that Dov would have paid, because that's normal, it's standard. The height above that, now we're telling him he's got to pay because he's taken an action that indicates that he wants that wall, but we can't expect that he paid the additional height. So let's take a look at the Rambam. It's the smaller sheet. And this book of the Rambam is called Hilchot Shchenim. It's the laws of neighbors. Rambam deals with many topics, and this is one of them: the laws of neighbors, how neighbors should act to each other. the third Parish Lishi, chapter 3. So Rambam says, Kosel Chotzer, so a wall, Hamavdil bein Shnei Shutfim, that is separating between the properties of two partners, Shenafal, this wall fell down, the case that our missions talked about. Yesh L'chol Echad Mishnehem, L'kofes Chavero, so either one can require his neighbor, his friend, his colleague, Libnoso Ad Gova Arba Amos. So if that wall falls down, Stan has a right to require Dov to participate in the rebuilding of that wall, according to the Rambam. Kadesh lo yiru zeh, so that they don't see into each other's property, right? Because Stan has privacy from Dov, Dov has privacy from Stan, and the assumption is they're both benefiting, and therefore they can require him. Avol yoser al arba amos, right? So if it's more than that, so that's the ruling. That's the halacha. So the Mishnah is telling us, and Rambam is giving us the halacha. And now we're going to get into the Gemara a little bit. Go back to the larger handout, and we'll get back to Rambam in a little while. And the Gemara has many different ways of trying to arrive at a conclusion. And what they'll do a lot of times is they'll look for a similar type of case and try to compare. How did we rule in one type of case? How does it relate to ours? So right now we're talking basically about neighbors, about land use, about real estate. But the rabbis are going to try now to use the case of a loan, a prepaid loan, right, to see if that has any parallel to our own situation. So Amar Reish Lakish, who was the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan, said, HaKovei Azman L'Chavero. So let's say that, I don't know, pick on Karen. So Karen lent money to Arthur, right? And she gave him a time limit to pay it back. A typical loan at the time of the Gemara was 30 days. So Karen said to Arthur, she lent him $5,000, and the agreement was that in 30 days he's going to pay it back. Okay, that's typical. V'amar lo praticha b'sochs mani. And Arthur comes along. So let's say 30 days pass, and now Karen goes to Arthur and says, Arthur, you need to pay me. And he says, I paid you already. So she says, the note is due, you didn't pay, what's going on? He says, I paid. You can, so sue me, right? So what does she do? She takes him to court, and what does he say? He says, I paid it early. He says, I paid it after 15 days. Even though it was due 30 days, I paid it after 15 days. So the Mishnah says, Ein on Emon. We don't believe him. Why not? Because Ilovai Shiafrav is mano. Halavai should pay on time. So in other words, we don't expect that people are going to pay their debts early. Because the Gemara assumes that people will pay their debts, but they're going to pay them on time. Not necessarily going to pay it early. So if his claim is he paid it early, we don't accept that. Got that on? Pay it on time, but don't pay it early. Abaye and Rava, Amay Travaya. So Abaye and Rava both say, Avid inish the para that goes zimne. So basically, they say that a person will pay his debt even within the time. So they disagree with what Reish Lakish say. They'll say that a person will pay a debt early because zimnin divis remula he lezuz, because it's $5,000. It's not a small amount of money, and Arthur went to the casino in Hollywood and he came home with a $5,000 winning, right? And he said, you know what? I have the $5,000 now. I'm going to give it to her now. I'm not going to wait until the end of the month. I'm going to pay it to her right. I'm going to pay it to her right now because it happens that I have the money right now. Amar, so he says, Ezil Ifrei, I'll pay it off now, because because I don't want her bothering me later on. I have the money right now. I'm going to pay her back. So they say that there are cases when people will pay back a loan early, right? So Tanan, the Gemara says, V'cheska shenasan, ad she'aviraya shelo nasan. So we assume that he would have paid it back unless we have some sort of a reason to believe he did. Hechidami, what is the case actually here? Ileimad amarle praticha bismani, if you're going to say, So Karen brings Arthur to court for the loan, and he says, I paid it on time. It was a 30-day note. I borrowed it from you on the 20th of October. Here it is, the 20th of November. I paid it on time, and that's it. Pshita b'cheska shenasan. So then we assume that's correct, because people do pay their loans on the due date. El alav amar le. However, if he said to her, Pratich b'soch zmani, I paid it to you after 15 days, less than the full term of the loan, in that case, avad inish depari b'soch zmani. So we're saying that he's paying it early, and we just established a principle: people don't do that, right? Unless something unusual happens, most of them people don't. So the Gemara says, Shani Hacha, this is different. To call Safa v'Safa Zimni. Oh, so now getting back to our case of the wall. What's happening here? So we're trying to apply this same reasoning of repaying a loan to building a wall. So what happened? The wall between Stan and Dove's property fell down, and it was a brick wall. And what Stan does is he builds the first course of bricks, and he goes to Dove and he says, pay me now for the first course of bricks. And so basically what's happening is that instead of waiting until the entire wall is finished, which would be the parallel to the end of the term of the loan, he's saying, it's partially done now, pay me for part of it. Do you see the parallel at all? In other words,
and the loan could be broken up that way too.
Exactly right. So the loan could be broken up that way too, and it's possible the loan could be repaid early. So Tashma, the Gemara says, B'cheska shelo nasan, and we still assume that he would not have paid ad shebiraya shenasan. So again, they say, we assume that he would not have made a partial payment until he can bring a proof that he did pay. So again, the Gemara says, hey, what is the case? If he said that I paid it to you when it was due, so in other words, in our case of the wall now, each layer of bricks that was laid, that's when that amount of money was due, and I paid it at that time. Amilo. So why not? Why would we not hold the same type of logic in terms of the loan? So Ella loved Amar Le, but he said to him, Praticha b'soch's money, I paid it early, basically. And we don't accept the fact that somebody paid it early. So Amalo of it inish the para bago zimni. So we assume that people are going to pay on the due date, but not earlier. So the Gemara says, Shani Hacha, this case of the wall is different. Because he says that he believes that he's going to get away with it. That if he comes in and makes this sort of claim in the court that he paid it early, he figures the rabbis are going to let him off. So therefore, he's willing to make that claim because he hopes that he's not going to be forced to pay. So then you have Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Bered Rav Yoshua, Avdei Abaye Rava. They held the same way as Abaye and Rava, who said that we assume, right, that a person can pay the loan early. The Hilchas is Reish Lakish, but the halacha is like Reish Lakish, and the halacha is that if somebody repaid a debt early, we don't believe that he did that. We require him to. We actually, in that case, we require the lender to swear, and then he can actually collect the debt, because it's looking at human nature that people do not tend to pay back their loans early. And therefore, if somebody is saying that he acted in an unusual way, we don't necessarily just accept that. We say to him, yes, Dave.
Were there any physical evidences of that? Today you would use a note or a promissory or something.
Right. So there could have been a promissory note. And then you get into the situation, why does she still have the note? Right? She should have given it to him, and he should have just torn it up. So that's the case. But in any event, let's say it's an oral loan, or a loan, pardon?
An oral agreement.
An oral agreement. That's right. Rachel, you wanted to?
Is there no such thing as a receipt in those days?
There was a receipt, right? So in fact, they call the receipt a shovar because it breaks.
Right.
So the typical way that it was done was that when he would be paying her back, she would hand him the note, and he would tear it up,
Okay.
right?
He wouldn't keep it?
And then he could keep it with his papers, but he wants to tear it up, because if he doesn't tear it up, it could happen that somebody could
He's
find
gonna be
that note
liable for it.
and go and try to collect it again. So, yeah, so when the loan was paid, there was gonna be some sort of an action taken that would indicate that the loan has been repaid.
But sometimes there is extenuating circumstances when you do pay back a loan early. For example, the case you just mentioned, I went to the casino and won $5,000. I'd love to give it back to her quickly in case I lose it back again. So maybe I might pay her early.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So that's the situation. So they say in a case like that, then she needs to now swear that she didn't get the money back. Because we don't necessarily believe you because it's an unusual act that you did. So she can swear that you didn't pay.
So a case that both parties would be required to swear in a case
No.
like this? Where
They won't do
she-
that because if both parties are required to swear, one of them is going to be swearing falsely,
Oh.
right?
That's one.
And we don't want to bring people to the situation where they're going to swear falsely. So only one party is going to swear, and generally speaking, it's the party who would be believed that's going to. Yes, Rich.
And can a woman be an aide?
Can a woman be an aide? In certain circumstances, a woman can be an aide, but not in a monetary case. In terms
So-
of
She was a loser to start with. Don't lend your money.
right, I should have said Curtis. I should have said Curtis instead
Right,
of Karen.
because women were just on another level.
Right. But you know, where our kids grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, that's where the famous Rabbi Teitz was. And when our son, Ben, who is now 42, when he was about 3 years old, he was very friendly with Rabbi Teitz's little grandson, who was also 3 years old. And so sometimes after school, the mothers were working or whatever, so Benny and Akiva would go over to Akiva's Bubby and Zadie, who was the row. And so one time, and the rabbi told me this with a smile on his face, he said that your son, I offered him a glass of orange juice, and he went in to ask the Rebbetzin if it was kosher. So women certainly are believed, but that's just the way it is. That in terms of a court of law, I would have been better starting with Curtis. So, continuing on the story, it says, "Va'afilu miyasmi," even in a case of orphans, because if you have a situation where a person passes away and he has debts, so what happens to those debts that person has? So now let's say now the creditor has a note, right, and he goes to the orphan, the son of this person who passed away, presents the note, and what's the orphan going to do? So in that case, avagav amar mar. So as we said, habali para minirsa yisomim lo yipar ela b'shvua. So in the case of orphans, if the orphan says, my father paid it back early, so generally speaking, we take it easy on them, because for one thing, they're not expected to know everything about the dealings of their parents, you know, because I don't know about all of you, but my parents never told us very much at all about what was going on financially. And so this son who inherited from his father doesn't know whether the father paid or not. But if this orphan said, my father paid it back early, now the creditor can make them swear, because chazaka lo ovid inish the parva goes in me, because it's assumed people don't pay back early. So if what this son is saying, this orphan son is saying, is that my father paid it back early, well, then you can make him swear, because he's claiming something that's unusual. And therefore, even in the case of orphans, we're going to make it a little bit more difficult for them.
You're assuming the orphan is responsible for the debts of the parents.
Correct. And the estate is responsible.
Is that only if there was an estate?
But there's no, if the father had no assets,
Right.
no, the son is not obligated to make up what the father didn't have. But if there is an estate and there are assets and there are debts, the son is obligated, or whoever's inheriting is
Pay for
obligated
it
to
out
settle.
of the assets of the estate.
Out of the assets of the estate.
But if there is none, then the son's not responsible.
No. So continue with the Gemara, Ibayalahu. So a question was raised, Tavo lacher zman. So let's say what happened in the case of this creditor and the debtor, that it was the claim or the court case came after the due date. So the debt was due on the 1st of November, and this person waited until the 1st of December to come into court. So now what's going to happen? Amar lo, now the debtor says, Praticha b'soch zmani. I paid it to you within, so let's say the loan originated on the 1st of October. It was due the 1st of November. The creditor comes into court on the 1st of December. Okay? And now what does the debtor say, right? So you have, who are we going to pick on now? Larry and Herschel, right? So Larry lends Herschel on the 1st of November. Larry lends Herschel $1,000. Supposed to be paid by the on the 1st of October. Supposed to be due on the 1st of November. 1st of December, Larry comes into court and he says, I lent Herschel $1,000 on the 1st of October. It was due on the 1st of November. He never paid me. So now, if Herschel comes and he says to the judge, Praticha b'soch zmani, I paid it on October 15th. Right? So he's saying I paid early. Okay? Mahu, what's the din? So so we're going to ask what's the din? Mi amrinan, do we say b'makam chazaka amrinan? So we're going to say that since that it's assumed he would have paid on time, right? So mali l'shakir. What benefit does Herschel have by lying? Because he could have just said, I paid it on time. And if he paid it on time, we're basically going to believe him. But he didn't say that. He said, I paid it early. But he could have if he wanted to. So therefore, we can't demand that he pay it now because he could have made a better claim if he wanted to. O Dilma, or do we say, B'makam chazaka lo amrina mali shakir? Or maybe in a case where this assumption exists, that we don't use this principle, where we say to him, where he can say, what benefit is it to me to lie? Because I could have said that I paid it on the 1st of November, right? So that's the question. Do we say that we accept this principle, or do we say that in any case we don't accept it? So the Gemara continues, Tashma b'chaska shenasan, ad shiavi raya shelo nasan. So we assume that he paid until the creditor can bring proof that he didn't pay. Hechidami, what is such a case? Ilema shetevo lacher zman. If it was a case where he demanded the money after the due date of the debt, Ramalo praticha b'zmani, enemy said I paid, so I lent it to you October the 1st. The money was due on November 1st, and Larry came to court on the 1st of December, and Herschel says I paid it on the 1st of November, the way it was due. Pshita. So then obviously we accept what he says, because that's the normal way that commerce is done. Elalav, Amar Le, but how about a case where he said to him, Praticha b'soch zmani, I paid you October 15th. So in that case, do we accept what he said? Because here the court case, the lawsuit is happening after the time the debt was due. Alma fila b'makam chazaka amrina malu l'shakir. Even in such a case, Herschel can say to Larry, listen, why would I lie? I could have just said that I paid you back on the 1st of November, and you would not have a case, because that's just normal way things are done. So the Gemara says, Shani Hacha, this is different. So coming back to a case of the brick wall, because the Kol Shafa V'Shafa Zimnihu, every layer is like another time period. Right? When Stan lays the first layer of bricks, that's when that part of it is due. Okay, that portion is due at that point. So he can't. So it's not a case where he builds up the whole wall and Dove says I paid, because he could have been paying all along. So Toshma me'arba amos ulamala ein mechayven oso. So getting back to the case of where the wall that Stan built was taller than 4 amos, and we can't require Dov to pay the cost of the extra height. But samach lo kosel acher, but the Mishnah says if he built another wall alongside of it, right? So then we can require him to pay. Why?
Because he's benefiting.
He's using
He's
it.
gonna use.
Because he's going to use it. That's right. He's going to use it. He's showing. He's building this.
What if he built it only as high as it was before, which was, say, 6 feet?
But he built it alongside of the other person's.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the case we're going to come to.
Okay.
We're going to come to actually a couple different ways. So let's say that the property was 100 feet deep, so the wall was 100 feet long, and Stan went ahead. He built this 100-foot wall, and he built it 8 feet high. And Larry now built an 8 feet high wall only 50 feet. So can we ask him to pay for the entire 100 feet? Because he only built 50 feet. Or suppose Larry built his section only up to 6 feet. Can we charge him? Can we expect him to pay?
I meant height.
Right. So if he let's say Larry built, so Stan built a wall 100 feet long, 8 feet high. 6 feet is the stand. He built 8 feet high. Larry came along and he built, let's say, a 100-foot wall, 6 feet high. So can we require Larry now to pay the difference for the entire of that 2 feet more for the entire length? Or suppose he built it only half the length, right? So the Gemara is going to ask that. So it says, so going further. So we're going to go back and forth between cases of loans and cases of the walls to try to figure out, because the logic should work in both cases. So now when it comes to the wall, because it says Shani Haka, this is different. Amar mi yemer mechayvi l'rabanan. In that case, can he say that he figured he's going to get away with it, because this is a wall between neighbors, and he's not going to get away with it. Amar le Ravacha v'rei Rava l'Ravashi. So Ravacha, who was the son of Rava, said to Ravashi, Toshma, he's coming here. Mana li biyadcha. So what happens here? So Dave now comes and he says to Jerry, you have $100 of mine. Okay? Amar lo, and Jerry says, yeah, you're right. I do have $100 of yours. Lamachar amar lo teneli. So the next day, I mean, maybe they were on the men's club bus trip, and Jerry didn't have the money with him at the time, but Dave said to Jerry, you owe me $100. Jerry said, yes, I do. The next day, they come home, they unpack and everything else. Now Dave comes over to Jerry and he says, okay, pay me the $100 that you admitted yesterday that you owe me. Imamar nesatich lecha, if he says to him, so if Jerry turns around and he says, I gave it to you, he's pumped.
$100.
The $100. No, he didn't say what 100. Because yesterday he said, I admit, I owe you 100.
But I paid you.
But now today Dave comes to collect, and Jerry said, I paid you. So in that case, he's putter, because he admitted the debt, and he said that he paid it. However, if he said Ein lecha b'yadi, but if when Dave asked Jerry for the money on yesterday, Jerry said, I don't owe you anything. Now he's hired, because he's basically denying the entire thing. So in the first case, he admitted there was a debt, and he says, I paid it. So he didn't have to admit they had a debt. He could have just said, I don't owe you anything, but he didn't. He admitted there was a debt, and then he says he paid it. So my lav nesativ locha, what does it mean that he says he paid it to you? Zamarle praticha bismani. That's the same as saying, I paid you on time. Right? Getting back to Arthur and Karen and Curtis, that he paid it on time. Right? That's the same type of answer. Ein lecha b'yadi, but if what Jerry said to Dave is that I don't owe you anything, Damarle pratich b'sochsmani, that's like saying I paid it early. That's making an unusual claim, and we don't accept that. Fikatani, and we learn chayav. In that case, he has to pay. So alma b'makam chazaka lo amrina ma'ali l'shaker. So here we've been trying to say that in a case of an assumption that people acted a certain way, that why would a person say, why do I need to lie? So here's a case where he could have just said, I owe you and I paid you, but he just said, I don't owe you anything. So he could have had a better excuse, but he didn't take it, and yet we're asking him to pay, right? A little complicated, but in other words, if he could have gotten out of it by saying, today I admit it, and tomorrow you come to collect to say I paid you, and he would have been off the hook. So when he told this lie that this never happened, why don't we just accept that, right? Because he could have done better. So we don't. So the question before of somebody paying off a loan early, because he could have said, I paid it on time, because if the claimant comes later, right, in the case where the lawsuit happens, remember the loan was in October, supposed to be paid in November, and the lawsuit is in December. So at that point, the person could have said, I paid you on time. But since he said, I paid you early, so in that case, we said we say what he has no advantage to lying, and therefore we should believe him. But in this case, we don't believe him.
A lawsuit is never on time. If it's due November 1st,
Right.
he's not going to court November 1st. You know,
Okay, so whatever is a
filing like this,
reasonable,
you know,
right,
there's
right,
always a delay.
right. Whatever is a reasonable delay. So
Besides which, it was just as a matter of courtesy, not jump on the person that day.
right, yeah. All right. So let's say that as soon as the debt was due, he called him up, and he said, hey, you didn't pay, and he said, okay, I'll pay you next week. Next week comes and he doesn't pay, but in the meantime, the person who is owed the money is on top of it. And finally, they hire a lawyer and they go to court. But suppose 3 months or 6 months go by and nothing happens. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, the person comes along and sues. Well, that's an unusual situation, right? And in that case, if the debtor says, I paid, and I paid it on time, you would believe him. So, but the point is, he didn't say I paid it on time. He said I paid it early. So the Gemara is saying that in that case, we do believe him anyway, because he could have said I paid it on time, and he didn't say that. So there's no benefit to him to lie. So we believe him. Does that make sense to you?
It's all human nature then, and
It's human nature. It's common sense, right? Because the person could have, if I had a way to get out of doing something by telling a better lie, for example, why wouldn't I do that, right? So he's saying that I don't have to, there's no benefit to me to lie, because if I said that I paid it on time, the court would believe me, right? And the case would be over. So we're saying that here in the same case with building up the wall, right? So he's building it layer by layer. So again, if he said that I paid it layer by layer, that's like saying I paid it early, because the assumption is that he's not going to expect to pay until the entire wall is complete, right? That's like paying on time. So if he says he paid in the meantime, as each layer was being built, maybe we wouldn't accept his testimony, because he's saying he did something unusual, something that he would not normally do.
Who are the members of this court?
Who are the members of the court?
Like, is this a basin?
It's going to be a bezdin, let's say. So three judges are going to sit and hear this case.
It could be normal to pay it as it's built.
As it's built, it could be.
It could be in the sense that Stan doesn't have the money to build a whole wall.
Right.
So he needs
Little by little.
payments as he's going in order to do it.
Incremental.
Well, so then he's got to go to him and try to collect. So,
Right,
but
But if he's-
Step by step.
step by step. So if he went,
If he did,
right,
and he says, I paid him step by step,
right.
you have to believe him.
Well, so what's happening? Stan is building the wall. He has enough to lay down to put one course of bricks, right?
Right.
So at the end, he makes that first course of bricks. Now he can't do the next layer
Without money.
without money. But suppose it's, I don't know, a cinder block is 8 inches high, right? So if you want to build a 6-foot fence, how many cinder blocks do you need? That's 72. I don't know, whatever. He has seven blocks, right? No, eight.
8 times 8.
Nine.
Nine, 72, right. It needs nine layers, right?
9 blocks.
Nine layers, right.
Set the
Thank
box
you.
at 12 by 6 or.
Right,
Whatever.
so he puts down the first layer,
8 by
and
8 by
if at the end of after he puts down the first layer, he goes to Dove right away, and he asks for payment, so then Dove is gonna pay him, but suppose Stan doesn't do that. Suppose Stan does all 9 layers of block. So, now, Dove could say, I paid you row by row, which is not normal, because normal is when the job is finished. That's generally when you pay for a wall.
Contractor, you pay as you go along.
Depends on the deal that you make with him,
Right.
right? If you pay him for the foundation, right, so he's making an 8-foot foundation, so he's gonna, you know, do all those, 12 course of block. So normally you don't pay him, you know, until the whole foundation is done. Of course, you could say to him, you'll pay him, you know, every time he lays a row of bricks, or you could pay him every day, whatever system you have. But the Gemara is assuming that the normal way it's done is that when it's finished.
After it's finished.
After it's finished. So saying that you paid row by row is just like saying you paid early.
They're both unusual, is that what you're saying?
Both unusual, exactly right.
Okay.
They're both unusual, and therefore the question is, why would that person lie? Because in the case of the debt that was paid back, or that the lawsuit started several months after the debt was due, and the person could have just said, look, the debt was due November 1st, I paid you November 1st. But he doesn't say that. He says, I paid you October 15th because I came back from the casino, I had the money. Right? So that's the problem. That's what our issue is. Because if he said I paid you November 1st, the whole story would be all over. But he didn't say that. So we're asking, do we accept his statement because he could have told a lie if he wanted to? So what benefit is it to him to lie? If he said that it happened, that he paid it back on the 1st of the month, that's all over. And especially since she didn't come to collect until much later, right? If a long period of time elapsed before she comes to collect the money, so now she's kind of, you know, we're a little bit suspicious of him, right? Because of them, right. Because that's not typical. So again,
If you're saying if someone was gonna lie, and they had several ways of lying, several stories they could have offered, so if they were really lying, they would have offered a more natural sounding,
better
a
excuse.
better excuse.
There was, what the person, what the
If they're bright enough
Doesn't
to
matter,
offer
it's the
that.
winning excuse.
what the defendant is saying in the lawsuit is that, why would I lie? What do I gain by lying? I could have just said that it was paid on the 1st of the month, and you would believe me, because she didn't come until 3 or 4 months later, so something is funny there, and you would have believed me. So now, if I'm telling you that I paid it 2 weeks early because I had the money from my winnings, right? So there's no advantage to me to lying, because if I told you something else, you would believe me, right? So why would I lie? That's kind of what the Gemara is saying. There's no benefit to me to tell a lie, because if I had told you that it was the 1st of the month, you would accept that, and that would be the end of the case. So I don't.
Why is he automatically believed because he said, I paid you at the right time, at the end of the month? Why is that automatic?
Well, it's not exactly automatic, because he's gonna, and I guess we'll do the Rambam next time. He's gonna be required to take a shvuah, but the point is that he is more, his claim is more credible than hers at this point, because she waited a long time to try to collect that money. And he says, I paid you a long time ago, what do you bother me for now? And the normal person is gonna say, you know what, the debt was due on the 1st of December, or 1st of November, whatever it is. She's not coming until April Fool's Day. So, right? So it doesn't make sense, you know? So that's why.
She should have made the claim much earlier.
She should have made the claim much earlier.
But there's no more, well, I still have some checks, but not many.
You know, if not to have brought a lawsuit earlier, but at least to ask for the money back, document that this is still a loan outstanding, whatever, it should have done something. And since she didn't do anything, so we're suspicious of her in a way. That's why he swears. What, Rachel?
This is really like tenant and owner court, what I'm seeing here, because why don't you believe her? You're giving him, the tenant, the guy who
owes the money.
owes the money, all the benefits of all the doubts. Whereas this poor person, principal, was kind enough to offer somebody money because he needed it for something, hopefully something,
Not to go to the casino.
something nice, not to go to the casino, exactly, something, for something important.
Right.
And yet, he's being believed and she's being questioned.
Because she's
She
acting.
lent it 1 month,
Right.
she told him it was due the next month, and then it took another month to go to the court. This is not long. have you gone to court at all? Do you know how long they've slept these things out? My friend got a divorce after 15 years. You really, give me a break. Court is not fun.
So, okay, and you're right, you're right. If the case was just like that, that the note was signed on October 1st, the loan was due November 1st, December 1st she takes him into court, that's not unusual. That's very common. But suppose she doesn't come until June 1st.
6 months later.
6 months later, 7 months later.
Maybe she just had a baby.
Okay.
It's intellectual overload, I just forgot that you paid me or didn't pay me.
No, she's
Okay.
young enough to have a baby, she has no money to lend.
Right. So, but the point is that what the Gemara is trying to establish is that there are normal ways that people do business. And if people act in the customary way, we can expect that they're gonna act a certain way. So in the first case, she lent him the money and on October 1st, November 1st, she comes to him and says to him, pay me. And he says, I paid you on October 15th. So in that case, do we believe him automatically?
No.
No, we do not, because most people, the Mishnah says, Levi, al Levi, they should pay on time, right? Not gonna pay early. So Arthur has a good reason, because he had the money. He got the money came to him somehow in the middle of the month, he had it, he didn't want to be bothered with it anymore, he didn't want her calling him looking for the money, he had it, he gave it to her. So, but still in all, she is more believed than he is, because she's acting the way that normal business works, and he's acting a different way, right? So therefore, she's the one to swear, not him. And we believe her. If she's willing to swear that he never paid, he's gotta go ahead and pay, because he acted in an abnormal way.
Yeah, but if he's acting in
Never
the
pay
abnormal
early.
way, one would expect him to
Don't
be
pay
the
early.
one to swear.
You need a receipt for everything
Well,
you
why
pay.
would we, because he
I always
has
write
less
down
credibility than
the
she has.
date
right
I
now.
paid, the
he's-
time I paid it.
Instead of saying, I
always
paid
write
you
down
on
paid
time,
on such
Right.
and
he
such
says,
a
I
date.
paid you 2
Me
weeks
too.
early.
Right,
Which is not the normal way.
Right.
We would want some kind of documentation from him, or at the very least, to put the burden of swearing on him, because he's saying he did something out of the ordinary.
well, documentation is gonna work. If he's got a receipt,
Right.
that's gonna work.
That's
That was
not-
the
I have to
abnormal
everything
way
from all
to
the
do
phone
it.
company.
If there's a
It's
receipt,
question
there's
about the
nothing to
bill.
talk
I
about.
I spoke
But
to
the
Stephanie.
question is,
I always throw
who
it.
has the credibility?
On
Who
November
are we
20th
more
at
likely
10
to
for
believe?
30
She would have
a.m.
more
I write it
credibility
on the bill.
in terms of doing that.
Right, so that's why.
Because he could have said, I paid you on time, what are you talking about?
No, but he can't in this case. There's a lot of cases, but the case that we're talking about right now is that she's coming on the due date. And she says to him, pay me now. He said, what are you talking about? I paid you 2 weeks ago. I paid you 2 weeks early, 2 weeks ago. So she's on the due date. She's coming the normal time. When the debt is due November 1st, she's coming in November 1st, right? And his response is, I paid it early. So since that's not what most people do, pay debts early, she has credibility because she's acting in a normal commercial way. He's not. So therefore, if we're gonna ask one of them to swear, who would we ask to swear?
Him.
The person's got the credibility.
Oh,
Right.
no, wait. But if he's lying, and isn't the idea that, wouldn't the idea of having to swear, wouldn't that scare a person?
It might.
Sure.
It might.
I mean, why do it? Why would she be afraid? Why not him? If it's customary to come to the person who owes you money on the day they owe it to you and ask for it, that's normal. Why would she have to swear that she didn't receive money from him when he says, but in an unnatural way, I paid her early, actually. So
Well,
why
because-
shouldn't he have to swear?
Yeah.
Because, and we'll just end with this, because our time is about up, that here we are, we're the court now, right? We're the judges. And we have to decide how we're gonna settle this case, right? Somebody is not telling us the truth. So how are we gonna settle? So what should we do? We don't have any documentation. Well, we know that there was a loan. One person said I paid it back, one says he didn't. And one of them is acting in a normal way, and one of them is acting in an abnormal way. So, to my mind, and Rambam too, I'd say Rambam before me, but we're gonna ask the person who has more credibility to take the swear.
But aren't we assuming, making an assumption that everybody we're talking about here, they're all El Chayim, that everybody means well, and that nobody's gonna lie intentionally?
That doesn't work like that.
This kind of.
No.
Well, that's part of it too, and one of the statements,
Right, that's the whole issue.
one of the statements that the defendant would make is to say that, I didn't expect that the rabbis were gonna make me pay. So he acted that way too.
For whatever
So-
reasons, you know, but they mean well.
All right, so, thanks, everybody, we'll continue, God willing, next.
Thank you.
Thank you, we just go.